Okay, getting it started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We're so excited you could join us. Please go ahead and enter your name in the chat and we'll get started soon. Tell us where you're from, anything else you want to add so we can start seeing who's on board. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see some familiar names. You're in for a treat today. So, Ann, do you want to get the chat going? Type your name and where you're from. Frederick, Maryland, yay. Get started. People are still joining. We'll get started in just a little bit. Jerry, a screenshot of one of your videos. Hi, Jimena from Alaska. One more minute. We have Palm Bay, Florida. Yashira, welcome. Nice to see everybody. We have Massachusetts. We have Alex. You're now in California. Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. And I want to welcome you again to today's webinar. My name is Judy Browse. I'm the Executive Director of the North American Association for Environmental Education. And please keep adding your name and where you're from and what you do into the chat. And today's webinar is all about nuclear fusion and all the announcements yesterday. Just kidding, everyone. It's not about nuclear fusion, but that is kind of interesting. So we have to keep our eye on this great announcement from yesterday about the future of energy. But I am so excited that today's webinar is all about podcasts, education, and conservation. And we couldn't have three more talented speakers with us today. I think you're going to really enjoy what they have planned, Jerry, Jack, and Demelza. And I'll introduce them more formally in just a minute, but just a little bit of background. And for those of you who don't know us, we host periodic websites every month trying to bring new ideas to the field, both from people that work in environmental education and outside of the field, so that we can all get new ideas and think about what more we can do and how to think about things differently. And this webinar is part of our wonderful partnership with the Forest Service, EE Inspire, and I cannot thank Rachel enough for all that she does as environmental education specialist with the U.S. Forest Service. Rachel, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everybody. So excited that you're here and just proud to get to partner with NAAEE on this and excited to learn all about podcasts today.
Yes, so we expect you to launch your own podcast, Rachel, as soon as this is over. But I'm really excited too about what we're going to learn. And I want to thank all our affiliate co-hosts. And if you don't know who your affiliate is, you can check it out. You can go to our website. And we are looking forward to seeing how many of our affiliates will be starting podcasts. And actually, many of them already have them. And then a big thank you to E360 and EPA for all the work that they do and the support for these webinars, as well as strengthening the field of environmental education. And you all know the routine by now on Zoom, but everybody is muted, but please type questions and resources in the chat. Many of you that are here actually have your own podcast or you want to start a podcast, so put those questions and ideas in the chat or any resources. You'll get a copy of the PowerPoint, you'll get a copy of the recording, so many resources that will help you with what you're trying to do. And I also want to thank our captioner, Alicia. If anybody needs help with the audio, this is being captioned, so just click on the box. And Anne, thank you so much. Anne is the Director of Professional Development, co-manager of E360, E360 Plus, for all that you do as our webinar guru. So we are going to start with a little poll, and we'd love for you to fill this out, be honest, and let us know where you fit. Okay, so how do you rate your podcasting expertise? Okay, we actually have a couple of people that are saying, what is a podcast? So we've got experienced podcast listeners, and we've got people that are thinking about a podcast, listen to podcasts. Thank you, Anne. And everybody can see that, right? Okay, great. So today, I think you're going to get some insights into not only how to do a podcast, but why we have, why are you doing a podcast, and how do you think about all the elements that go into making a good podcast? And there's also the education and conservation element to what we're talking about today. So I'm going to introduce our speakers very quickly here, and then quickly turn it over to Jack to get us started. But some of you might have met Jack if you were at the NAAEE conference in Tucson. He and Jerry were part of the closing plenary about how do we educate for change. Jack is one of this year's EE 30 under 30 winners. It's a very high honor. We get so many applications, and then we call it down to the top 30, and Jack is one of those top 30. He's the creator of Pangolin, the conservation podcast, a show that actually celebrates those underrepresented species, including insects, my favorite, and amplifies kind of the voices of underrepresented groups, including conservationists. He's a passionate speaker, conservation educator, works for the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland and the Royal Botanical Garden in Edinburgh. And he's working on his PhD right now, studying the impact of living collections on the climate and biodiversity crisis. So Jack, welcome. And then Jerry Ellis, many of you also know Jerry. I am so lucky that I've known him for more than 3 decades. And for those of you who know him, you know he is one of the most creative and talented people in conservation. He links education and media, amazing photography and videography with creativity and conservation. He's the co-creator and host of Talking Apes, and he'll talk more about that. And for 3 decades, he's been traveling around the planet to gather stories and really try and save the great apes. And he's met with so many extraordinary people, and many of those have ended up on his podcast. You've probably seen his photos. He is an incredible photographer and videographer, and we are just so lucky to have him here. And he's the creator and camera person behind his sister project, Apes Like Us, which you can see on YouTube. So Jerry, welcome, and thank you so much for all you do. And here's just a little bit of what his Apes Like Us looks like. And then we have Demelza Bond. And last but not least, she's an assistant producer at Talking Apes and works with Jerry on the podcast. She has over a decade of experience working with and advocating on behalf of primates as a researcher, a fundraiser, a writer, and a caregiver. She currently lives in Spain, where she was recently caring for rescued chimps. Demelza is also the media and communications manager at Apes Like Us, and we're so thrilled she could be here today, and that she and Jerry together make an awesome team. So I am going to stop sharing and turn this over to you, Jack, to kick us off. But welcome to all of you, and welcome to everybody listening today.
Hi there, guys. Thank you so much for having me. And once again, for overly kind words, Judy. Thank you so much. I'm just going to pop some slides up on the screen. What's it doing? There we go. Share screen and then PowerPoint. There we go. So there we go. So thank you so much. My name is Jack Baker. I'm the host of Pangolin, the conservation podcast. And for the next couple minutes, what I'm going to do is introduce the session, let you know what we're going to be doing throughout the next kind of hour, help people who maybe didn't know what podcasts are. I'll kind of get us all into a level playing field, and also tell you a little bit about my show as well, just to kind of kick us off before we get into the real meat of everything. So yes. First of all, we're going to start with some introductions, some kind of getting started advice on how to podcast, why you should podcast, what the kind of initial thoughts behind your podcast might be. We're then going to jump into talking about the technology that goes into podcasting, everything from the kind of microphones right up to the kind of very last kind of stage, which would be publishing the podcast and getting it onto things like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We'll be talking about working with guests. So if interviewing is something you're interested in, we'll be talking a little bit about that, as well as marketing and monetization of the podcast. So if that's something you're interested in as well, we can do that as well for a little bit. Now, of course, there's a lot to get through, but we will have time for a Q&A at the end, hopefully. However, as Judy said, do be posting your questions throughout, because if we see something come up in the chat and we think, actually, we can include this earlier on, then we will try and incorporate it as we go through as well. So do keep posting questions in the chat. So for people who don't know, if anyone's feeling a bit like my lovely lemur friend there on the slide, a bit shocked, confused, lost, what is a podcast? Well, the way I like to describe it to people is it's basically an online, on-demand radio show. It is an audio file that can be found kind of either on your website, maybe on a blog, or on sharing platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And aside from that, there is really no other rules when it comes to what a podcast is and what a podcast should be. They're used for both personal and professional reasons. So I think today we've got a good mix of kind of, I maybe represent the personal use of podcasting because I am completely independent. I do it all on my own. And then we have Jerry and Demelza who have kind of got theirs associated with a larger kind of organization, I suppose. And then they can be really whatever you want them to be in terms of production. They can be a one-off, kind of you record an hour-long interview and that's all you ever want to do. Or they can be part of a series. They can be recorded alone, kind of you just talking into a microphone, or they can be kind of a conversation. They can be perfectly audio, exact, all the levels correct, everything edited to absolute pristine quality, or they can be a little rough around the edges, and they can be produced for free or with a bit of financial investment as well. Really, podcasting is a fantastic format because aside from ending up with an audio file at the end, there's so many paths to how you can get there. And that's kind of what makes it so exciting and such a useful, versatile tool. So now we know what a podcast is. I'll tell you a little bit about my show just to get us the ball rolling and get you thinking about like where my show came from and see if it kind of relates to any of your experiences, I suppose, out there. So as Judy said, I'm the host of Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast. If you scan the QR code on the screen, that will take you to a little kind of link tree that you can go and then look it up on social media and things if you'd like to do that. Pangolin is a chat show dedicated to exploring and amplifying underappreciated conservation stories. It really started out focusing on one particular species, the pangolin, but then it grew because I felt that there were so many more stories out there that really fell under this umbrella of underappreciated, unspoken about, but exciting and really interesting. So we've kind of tried to highlight those tales, everything from kind of reframing the giraffe, like a popular creature that everybody loves, but is facing threats and kind of reframing that for people, all the way down to kind of weird, wonderful, strange little creatures like the Lake Titicaca frog. We've talked about insects, we've talked about plants, all sorts of underappreciated things. The show is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other major platforms. It's been streamed over 30,000 times in over 90 countries. It's got about 60 episodes now, 3 spin-off series, and it's been featured in BBC Wildlife magazine as well. But it wasn't always that. And I think to get us started and thinking about podcasting, I wanted to kind of go back to the basics of where my idea kind of came from and kind of what made me start and what actually, yeah, got me to here. So mine probably started very differently to Jerry's and Demelza's, and they'll tell you about that in just a second. My podcast actually started as part of a university assignment. So while I was doing my master's, I was told, oh, you can either write a 15,000 word dissertation or you can create a creative portfolio. And I thought, I'm dyslexic, I'm dyspraxic, I work better with pictures and voices and nice creative things. So I instantly wanted to do that. So yes, I found this little creature, the pangolin, that I really loved and wanted to talk about. I produced 6 episodes, submitted it for grading, got it back, and that's kind of where it began. I kind of accidentally fell into podcasting, but I loved it so much that I kept going with it. And I think even now, looking back, the questions I asked myself when it came to podcasting are actually, or to producing something for university, are actually things we can all think about when producing a podcast in the beginning. I asked myself, well, why am I doing this? So I was aiming for maybe to please kind of markers, but I also wanted to create something that was for a general audience. So think about who your audience is. Who is it for? Why are you kind of producing it in the first place? And what are the kind of criteria there? Think about how many episodes you're going to produce and what you want to do. Do you just want to make the one, or do you want to make 6, or do you want to make 10? Or like, think about that before you even get started. So you kind of set these boundaries. Similarly, think about how long each episode will be, how long you want them to be. I always aim for about 45 minutes, but they always go longer. So you set these things to kind of help kind of get that, keep it kind of within boundaries. Think about how much time and money you want to spend. So as a student, when I started, I had all the time in the world to work on it, but I had no money. So think about the type of things you're willing to commit to creating a podcast. And think about what your show will do, and specifically what your show will do differently to other people. What makes it special and what makes it really unique? For me, that was the story of the pangolin, and then developed into this kind of unique ideas. For other people, I know there's shows out there that review things, review animals. There's shows out there that kind of talk exclusively about plants and the study of plants or invertebrates. Think about what your little niche is as well. But having said all that, also don't be afraid that if you set all this in the beginning, you can't change and you can't do things. For example, I have made far more than 6 episodes like I intended. I've kind of extended the length of episodes when I thought they were really interesting and the conversation was good. And I think most importantly, the reason why I've changed the reason why I podcast has changed as well. So why I podcast has gone from being for a university assignment into a whole range of other things. It's provided networking opportunities for work. It's allowed me to learn new skills, brought exposure to more perspectives, helped me build kind of a brand around myself that helps people know who I am, which can be really useful in terms of social media and kind of finding jobs and just going into spaces. If people know like, oh, you do podcasting, can be really, really interesting, kind of sets you apart. I actually really recently, when I first went into my PhD office, I sat down and one of the people in there turned around and were like, I think, are you Pangolin Jack? And it was the most cringeworthy thing that's ever happened to me, but it was really good because it started us off on the right foot of like, oh, like we have something to talk about now, and it can be really useful. As well as that, of course, it also increases conservation impact by building this kind of bigger audience for you, exposing you to more kind of people, your message to more people, and increases your reach. So from a little bedroom here in Scotland, these are all the countries around the world which Pangolin has now reached. And it's reached them, it's my voice gone all these places, but also more importantly, the stories that I care about have gone to all these places as well. And so that's kind of, in a very brief summary, why I do what I do and why I love it and where it came from. And I think that kind of, these are all questions maybe we should be thinking of. I don't know, well, so what we're going to do now, I've talked for enough. I've got to introduce what we're going to do. And before we get into all the technology and technological aspects, I think I'll throw it over to Jerry. I'll stop sharing my screen. I'll throw it over to Jerry and let him kind of talk a little bit about himself, introduce himself, because yeah, you're not here, as much as I'd like it to be all about me, you're not here for that today. So yeah, Jerry, do you want to take it away?
I will, and thanks, Jack. That was great. Thanks, Judy, also for the introduction. That was lovely. And we have known each other for 3 decades, which is amazing. I think, Jack, mine's going to be a little plainer than Jack's because he had that wonderful PowerPoint and there's no use duplicating it all. So I'll jump right into our story and why we started, because it was a very different story. To get things going, we, as an organization, Globio, our nonprofit, our goal is outreach and awareness about the plight of great apes, primates, their habitat, and the bigger scope of conservation on this planet. And so we saw a podcast as part of our overall media outreach. So we had to think about it in terms of where does it fit into our strategic plan as an organization? And I know that looking down that list of the folks that have jumped in on the chat, there's a lot of organizations typed out there. And that's going to be, I think, part of a key piece for a number of you is like, how does a podcast fit into that? I think we've gotten to a place now with podcasting so that a lot of people see it as something that's mandatory. Just before the pandemic, about 5 years ago, there were less than 500,000 podcasts. They're now, I think it's approaching about 3 million podcasts. So you really need to think about that podcast, as Jack was saying, how does that fit into your overall plan and goals? Well, for us as a nonprofit that's looking at creating awareness and education and understanding about what's happening to great apes, primates, and their habitat, we were trying to figure out what are our options to speak to different audiences. And part of that came about actually at the NAAE conference in Spokane a few years ago. And while there, Judy was kind enough to let us put up a number of large images of great apes outside the main sort of conference hall. And for those of you who were at that Spokane conference, you might remember those. Well, while they were there, I started doing an informal poll of people and asking basically one question, which I thought if it could be answered, I'd follow it on with a second question. And that was, how many people could name the 5 great apes? And what we found is after interviewing several hundred of the people who were attending the conference, and again, all of you, especially at that conference, should have been, naturalists, environmentalists, scientists, something, in the field. There was no one who could name all 5 great apes, except for one child who was attending that, 12 years old, attending it with his mother, and he could name all 5 great apes, but nobody could say where those 5 great apes were. So just as a clue, in case it comes up in your trivia questions, it's bonobos, chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas, and us. Almost everybody couldn't get us. And that really sent kind of alarm bells off with us in the organization, in that some of the most basic information we had to get out in front of people before we could even talk about bigger issues that are facing great apes. And so we've begun looking for every avenue we could to talk to people about what great apes are, what's happening to them, how they relate to us, how we connect to them, things like zoonotic diseases and habitat loss. So this podcast became an outgrowth of that, but it first started off as Instagram Live. That didn't work. It started off as YouTube. It started off as Facebook Live, but none of those formats really are the same as a podcast. So 2 years ago, we moved into a full podcasting situation. So Talking Apes then became just a straightforward podcast. And that over the last 2 years, we've recorded I think we're over 50 recordings now, and moving into our full second season with some extraordinary guests. And Demelza will bring up our website for the Talking Apes podcast in a few minutes, and you'll see some of those guests, but they're really extraordinary people in connecting us to apes. But the key for us was that how do we reach diverse audiences? We often think about diversity in terms of racial or socioeconomic diversity, but we also think about it in diversity in terms of how people learn and how they access information. And so for us, the podcast became part of our strategic plan in outreach, was to use this as a vehicle for expanding how people might learn about great apes, primates, and their habitat, as well as us, to understand humans even better. So that was the principal reason for starting the podcast. And then as it grows, we start looking at other avenues to make it stronger, make it more receptive. And Demelza will talk about some of those as we talk about the structure and everything of that. So hope that gives you some idea of it. And I'll toss it back to Jack.
No, that was really, really interesting, actually. And it's really interesting to see the different pathways, I suppose, into the same kind of output. And hearing about Instagram Live and things, it's an interesting kind of, comparison to make of like all these things that are solely on one platform, or is it better to do kind of an audio file? Like, it's an interesting thing that you've kind of been messing around with and playing with in different ways. I guess it moves us well, though, onto kind of the next section, which we were going to talk about. Now we know everybody, which was technology. And I don't know, because me and Jerry have been talking for the first little bit, I don't know, Demelza, if you want to kind of jump in and maybe explain. And I mean, we've only got an hour, so we have to keep it as brief as possible, but in the briefest way possible, the technology people need to create a podcast.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm looking at the clock and thinking, oh, we need to talk fast because they've just got what to talk about. Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Judy, and also to Jack. I am not going to talk anything about myself. I'm just going to go straight into some of the platforms we use so you guys can get a logistical idea of how we actually go about all this. I'm going to share my screen now. Jack's just talked me into the you're going to talk about the technology part, and I just told the guys before we entered this webinar that I've never shared my screen before, so I hope this works. But I'm going to just show you a little few bits and pieces that we use that make the podcast logistically possible. So can everyone see that?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so shall I start with some of the platforms we use, guys? Like
I would start really back to basics of like, when you're first planning a podcast, what's the first thing that you do? Okay,
so I'm going to have to talk very quickly here, but yes. So as Jerry said, you know, our podcast, this isn't necessarily the way that everyone has to do it. Some podcasts can be really slapdash. Some podcasts can be literally two people, have one person talking into a microphone for half an hour. It can be two people having a conversation. This entire webinar is about podcasts that are engaging and impactful and help wildlife. So for us, our podcast, on the side of running the non-profit Globio, this is a big part of our world, takes a lot of strategic planning, and I would really like to give you guys kind of a working example of kind of all the layers of planning that go into this and how multifaceted podcasting really is. Because for us, it's not just, it's not just what you hear at the end, which is, an hour of two people sitting at a microphone having a fun conversation. It takes a lot of planning. So what I've got open on my screen now is actually our strategic planning document. And this is where Jerry and I go through the motions of planning everything from start to finish. This first page is, I'm not going to show you everything, but this kind of just where we laid down our strategy and what we wanted to achieve over the next couple of years with the podcast. Big important page here, we've got our guest suggestion list. So this is where Jerry and I and another one of our members at staff at the Nonprofit Globio, Megan, we throw in suggestions of who we think would be a good fit for the podcast. And then as you can see, we throw in notes about them and their contact details, and we update each other on where we are in contacting them. This is our schedule. So this is everything we've recorded over the last few months is in green, and then these in red are upcoming guests. And a really important part of this that I just wanted to show you are the links that we've got in here to our research. So for each guest, you've obviously got to do your background research, or you just having a pointless conversation with a stranger. So we put a lot of work into deep researching our guests and preparing a good conversation roadmap for them. So I'm just
Melissa, can you make that a little bit bigger so people can see it? Can you just
Sure.
increase it a tad?
sure.
And everybody will get a chance to see all of this, just so you can see. Thank you so much. That's
Yeah,
much
you're
better.
welcome. So you can see here, we've got the guests, we've got the recording date. This is something I should really point out, a big thing to think about, especially if you're an international team or you're interviewing international guests, is think about time zones. So as you'll see here, I've got the time for the guest, time for Jerry, who's in the States, and the time for me, I'm in Europe. And you really have to plan ahead and think about that, because sometimes it can be a nightmare. So we often record at odd times of day. We're trying to be flexible according to our guest needs, but in general, it works if we do Jerry's mornings and my evenings. And then what we do is we create a research document, and I'll just quickly show you that. And this is where we do our guest research. So this is a guest we've got coming up in January. So we can see we've got the date and the name of the person. And then in here, we're going to have a think about the themes that we want to cover. We do a heavy amount of background research on the guests, because we like our conversations to be valuable and in depth. You know, it's not just the one basic Wikipedia search. We really, really want to get the best out of our guests. So we do heavy amount of research. This is where Jerry and I suggest questions that we might want to ask the guest. And then this is me. This is my segment where I come in as sort of an engagement communications person who reads out audience comments. So I'll write in here what I'm going to read out that week. And then we've got a place for links and further sources of reading. So I just wanted to quickly show you that one. And then back to, of course it's closed. Back to my podcasting document, what else we've got in there. So release date schedule. This isn't so important to you guys, it's just for me and Jerry, but what you can see here is really important for us when it comes to the strategic planning of guests, because we like to really, really think about important dates throughout the year. You guys can see that, right? That's still on my screen. Yeah.
Yep.
So we pick out key dates throughout the year, usually related to primate conservation and forests and the kind of things that the kind of topics that we cover in our podcast. So you can see here, for example, we've got World Bonobo Day, but we also cover other important dates. For example, here we've got International Women's Day, and that way we can try to figure out a schedule with guests that we can match up with those dates. Now that takes a lot of planning, because some of the guests that we have got really, really busy schedules. So for example, at the moment, me and Jerry are planning on doing a month in early next year where we cover a bunch of guests who talk about disease transmission and zoonotic diseases. But these are like really special, specialist experts. So we have to book them months in advance. But we do this because we want to have impact and we want to be strategic about how we approach this.
Dim, if I can just jump in for a second. Part of the reason that we went to this, and for those of you who are thinking about starting a podcast or are in the early, your first few podcasts, the first year of podcast, 22 in total, we didn't do any of this. There was none of this thinking. This all came about after Dim came on board last spring here in the Northern Hemisphere. She came on board, and that was a big part of the reason that she was coming on board was to put more strategic planning into this, so that we could reach a larger audience. Part of the reason that we target these dates is that we can build other social media around them. If you're trying to reach, and Demelza will go into social media and some other things in a minute, but we're trying to, besides just how do you get the word out, it's going to be a question that a lot of you will have, is how do you get the word out about your podcast? Part of it is for us is tying it around things that people already have their radar out for. And so these are some of the things that people might already be kind of prepared to listen to or hear about or hear new announcements about. So if we can tie it into some of these events with a special group, then it gives us more advertising and marketing sort of push behind it all. That's it. Go ahead, Melissa.
Thank you, Jerry. Yes. So I'm very aware of time. I won't go through every single one of these pages, but I'll just mention a few of the others. So you can see here at the bottom, we've got cross promo research. So this is all about marketing. This is where we look out for other podcasts that might want to do cross promotions with us. So sharing sharing an advert, or perhaps featuring as guests on each other's shows. Here we've got reviews and listener comments. So this is where I collect and collate all the reviews and listener comments that we've had in, between each episode, and we read them out on future episodes. And that's more about audience engagement, which we'll go into hopefully a little bit soon. And then here we've just got the past seasons log, which is where we just have the contact details of all our past guests. Now, very, very quickly, as we're talking on logistics, I just want to mention the software, the platform that we use to make all this possible. So for us, and I think for you too, Jack, you use Riverside.
Yes, yeah.
For recording. So I'm just going to bring that up on my screen. We use a platform called Riverside FM. So me and Jerry have a subscription to this. Jack, do you use like a limited free version?
So no, I have a subscription. So this was the first thing. So I used to record my podcast on Teams and Zoom because they were free. And then when I first wanted to upgrade the quality a little bit, this is where I went next. And I found if you're kind of looking to do things on a budget, Riverside always seems to have discount codes all over the place that can help you with that. I don't know, I'll let you explain what it does and what it is, but yeah, it's also what I use. So would endorse. It's very, very, I find it really good.
We could do a whole nother hour on the logistics of Riverside and the interface and how to use it, but I just wanted to make people aware that this is a really, really popular podcasting platform. It does kind of work almost like a Zoom meeting, except it kind of looks a little bit more like you're in a trendy radio studio when you're in there. So you can set up all your studios here. When you enter the studio, you turn your I can't because I'm in a Zoom, but you would turn your microphone on, turn your camera on, and you can see everybody's face in there. So it's really nice. It's like you're having a face-to-face conversation, and you don't have to record the video. You can reassure your guests that you're only recording the audio if that's what they're comfortable with. I just will say on this, Jack, Jerry, and I are going to put together a document for everyone. So if people will leave the email addresses at the end of the session, we will put together a document where we leave the links to all these platforms, and we can just add a little bit more detail about how we use them and what's going on. Because like I say, we are limited for time. What would you like me to speak about next, guys? Do you want me to go into a little bit about Buzzsprout, or you use a different one?
I guess I'd jump in here and just say that, so that's how you record, and that's kind of the platform we use to record. But I think it's really important to take a moment to say that I think a lot of people will be worried about, like microphones and what they use to actually make those recordings. So what I would say is, if you're wanting to record with guests, Riverside is a fantastic option. You can just use your laptop microphone to record and get something out there, or you can kind of you can get kind of a cheap, I have mine here, a cheap microphone that you can kind of plug in to make yourself sound a bit nicer there. So you can do that, or of course you can record it in person if you want. If it's a kind of internal, kind of you're interviewing people within your organization, you can sit down with microphones and kind of record. I use for that, it's called a Yeti, and that records really well. All of two people having a chat. So I think we kind of, that seems slightly complicated, but we can kind of you can simplify it down. You don't have to use a platform like that to create things. And you don't even have to buy a microphone if you don't want to. You can just use your laptop microphone to create content on there.
And Jack and Demilza, some of the questions that have come in, can you use your cell phone? How much does Riverside cost? If you want to answer any of those while you go, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And we'll share all these resources.
Yeah, let me jump, as Demilza
Yeah.
said, sorry, Jack, as Demilza said, there's going to be, we'll put a document together. We'll have links in there to all of these resources, both paid and unpaid, because again, we kind of approached this from two different angles. You know, Jack coming at it as a solo podcaster, he was really budget conscious, also as a student and trying to deal with that. He was coming at it much more budget conscious. As an organization, we actually allocated funds from our general funds because we saw this as part of our outreach strategy. And we are now, and we can talk about this in a bit of monetization, but we're now looking at how can we bring in other funding through revenue sources, grants, and other things to support the podcast, grow the podcast. I mean, we have a number of different costs as well as staffing. I mean, Demilza, much of her time gets spent on this, so it goes for that. Just to jump back very quickly to the microphone and the resources, we all use Riverside as a recording studio. It's online. It's much higher end than Zoom. It's much higher end than some, doing one of those. You can record in much higher wave files, which are necessary for the audio, plus it can record in 4K video. So if you do want to record the video, a lot of podcasters are now putting portions of their podcast up on YouTube. So if you want to do that, that's one of the benefits of using Riverside. Riverside is the platform that larger organizations with a bigger professional version of it. There's several tiered versions of Riverside, like CNN, ESPN Sports, some of those groups, they use Riverside. So when you're watching television or watching streaming stuff of theirs, you're actually, some of it's through Riverside. The other option, if you don't use a platform, is to record in person. And Jack's done some of that in the field, and maybe you can talk about that in a second, Jack. But you need to get some kind of, there, so it's in focus, some kind of recording device. And this is called a Zoom H5. And it also comes with, you can see it has a microphone on top of this, so you don't even have to have a microphone. We use, in the field, we use microphones to go with it, and they plug in with a cable into the bottom, because we do field recordings as well. So if I'm filming in Cameroon, or I'm in Uganda or Sierra Leone or someplace, Borneo, someplace like that, and I'm meeting people and working with people that'll make good podcasts, we want to be able to record those podcasts on location. So we have equipment along to do that. So we can do both field recordings and we can do studio recordings. The beauty of something like Riverside FM is that you can, all you need is a Google Chrome link and you're set to go. So that's something that you need to think about if you're just about to start a podcast or you're early into it, is where are you going to be doing your recordings? Are you going to be primarily in a studio? Or are you going to be and again, as Jack mentioned, it could be your bedroom is your studio, but are you going to be in a studio setting, or are you going to be live, or are you going to be doing both? Because that will determine some of the equipment you have and how much of an expenditure you need to make to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Jack.
No, I was going to say that's perfect advice. And I would say as well, I will hold up my phone and not a fancy microphone, because a phone is just as good as in terms of recording. And so if you are looking just to try it and experiment, there are apps that you can download. There's a Riverside app that you can download. There are different recorders that you can download onto phones and talk into those. And those are equally, if you're just trying to test things out, equally as kind of easier to use, probably simpler to use and cheaper to use. So if it is something you want to do, it's something you can do. And the quality might not be quite as nice and crisp as some of the other more expensive microphones and options like Riverside. But I find that if the content is good, people will still listen to it, even if it's a bit cracklier, even if there's a wind blowing in the background. Setting the scene like that and having that can sometimes go down quite well.
Well, and, oh, sorry.
Oh
Yeah,
no, I was gonna move us on. So if you have another point, then
yeah, I was just gonna say, we've included also, we'll include some links to starting a podcast. And one of the people that will be in those links is a guy named Pat Flynn, who you can see on YouTube. And it's Flynn, Flynn, I believe, but we'll have links there. And he is a professional podcaster and does a whole YouTube channel just on podcasting. And he's done a really wonderful podcast that's all the equipment you need to start a podcast. And he goes through sort of the cheap version, the medium version, and the expensive version. So that'll help you, where he spends many minutes doing it, where we'll just pass that along to you.
Yes, I think that's a good thing, is that, yeah, no matter your budget, there's always an option for you. So once so we kind of talked there, you've planned what you want to do, you've created the audio file, whether that be with an expensive microphone or a cheap one, or Riverside, or just holding it up to your head and talking. You then need to edit it and put it out there. So I edit all of my files on Audacity. It's a free audio editing software. It doesn't have a lot of hugely complicated things. It's the thing I was taught in primary school here in the UK. So I would have learned it when I was about probably 6 or 7, and it still works here, and it still works really well. So I'd recommend Audacity for kind of editing things. I don't know, Demelza, do you do the editing? Jerry, do you do the editing for yours? Who does the editing? Jerry, and what do you use?
I do the editing on this side of the Atlantic, and we use both. It's the Adobe suite. So some of the editing is done in Premiere, which is what we do the video editing and film editing in. So we just use the audio tracks in that, and then we also, there's a complete audio suite there. Those are paid products. There will be links to those as well. But that's what we use for doing all the editing.
Amazing. Yeah. And Audacity, once again, I'm looking really cheap tonight. Audacity is free, so that's why I use it as well.
We used Audacity for many years, believe me, doing other audio editing. So Audacity is a really great tool. I highly recommend it if you're on a budget.
Yes. Judy, you just popped up there. Did you have something to?
Just a question to think about. We had a couple of questions about time zones, how you handle that, but we also had a question of how does this help you advance your education and conservation work, and how do you measure your impact beyond numbers? But I know, Demelza, you also wanted to show kind of your Instagram and how you think about that. So we have about 10 minutes left, a little bit more. Just trying to time this and still be able to get in a few questions. Really great advice. Thank you.
Yes. So once you've got the podcast edited, you can post it onto a hosting site, which is something that will distribute it for you. So I use a website called Anchor.fm. What you do is you upload, it's a free option. Again, you upload your podcast to there. It's run by Spotify. You put in all of your descriptions, what you want to call the episode, what you want to call the podcast, and it will distribute it to all of the major podcast providers for you totally for free. And within that will bring back not just kind of lists of subscribers and things, but also numbers of tracks day by day, the listens, what episodes are being listened to. And I find it to be a really helpful tool to see, okay, what episodes do people engage with the most? What do people like? Also within that software, you can add questions and things to podcasts. So I think a good way to register engagement is not just with listeners and things, it's to kind of put little polls and things that can be added to the podcast through that. And then you can see how many people respond to that, how many people are actually paying attention to what you're saying and going down there and answering those polls. I know, Demelza, you use a different platform if you want to run through that briefly, I suppose, for listeners, and then we can get on to...
Yeah, sure. I'll go super quickly with this because I know we need to get onto sort of the engagement and the impact kind of stuff. But very quickly, we use a platform called Buzzsprout. I'll do a very quick share screen. So we've got... Hang on, bear with me. So this is Buzzsprout. This is the one we use. We pay, is it $14 a month, Jerry?
Yeah, there's different plan levels, but ours
Yeah.
is $14 a month, and that
So
allows you
our plan
3
is
hours.
$14 a month, and yeah, it's fantastic. It's just, it does everything you need it to, basically. So you know, you can see here all the episodes you've uploaded. You can see how many times they've been listened to. You've got directories, so it automatically puts it out onto all the platforms for you, such as Apple and Spotify and Google. You don't have to apply individually to be listed and to have your podcast played on those platforms. So that's fantastic. It offers help with monetization, and it gives you analytics. So here over in your stats area, you can actually have a dive into how many people have listened to each episode, where those people were based in the world. And you can also use those very strategically. So when you're looking at what you've done in marketing, you can see where spikes have happened. You can check where you've had more listeners on a certain time of the week or time of the month, and think about what it was you did in your marketing efforts at that time to push that episode out and see if it was successful. So there's a very, very quick rundown of Buzzsprout. Again, hopefully we'll put it in the document for you guys.
Yes, I think that's going to be really useful. As we say, all of these links and things will be in that document for you to reflect on, go and have a look as well. Now, I know we wanted to touch on working with guests and marketing and monetization. We can add sections into the document about that at the end, but I think the real question that's been coming up is impact and how you know you've reached people. So I guess we can touch on that for a little bit first and kind of prioritize that. For me, it's really about engaging with the listeners. And I think I always find that the impact that the show has is not necessarily, it's quite hard to measure, because it's very much a kind of, you only hear back, it's only when people talk to you about it, because it's out there on the internet, that you know that it's making a difference. So I always make an effort to post on social media, push people to social media, push people to different platforms where we can interact and chat about things. And then when you do get that, I've heard people saying that they managed to get jobs through listening to the show. They've bought memberships to their local zoo because they fell back in love with wildlife. They've done all of these things. They've gone outside for a walk and they've made it part of their routine. Maybe they've put the headphones in and gone out and listened to a nature-based podcast while out in nature. And so I really push people to social media and try and build this community of people who are around the show, by getting them to chat to each other, because I think that really helps to amplify impact and really boost things. The other thing that I would say before I hand it over to Demelza and Jerry for impact that I find is, what I find really useful and can be really good is actually collaborating with other podcasters. So the impact of the show and the numbers of people who listen to the show always increases when I appear on someone else's podcast, or I have someone who already has a podcast on my show. Because I think you have listeners who are already switched on to the world of podcasting. They already know what a podcast is. They're already aware that they like listening to them and they know a voice that's going to be on it. So I would say that to increase impact, a good thing can really be to build community and then to collaborate with other podcasters and other people who are doing things in a similar vein to you. I think those are how I kind of increase it. I also, of course, do all the social media thing and I watch the likes and things, but it can be really hard to really pin things across to what's successful. I don't know, Demelza, do you have insight into that?
I mean, honestly, I can almost reiterate exactly what you said word for word. When I came onto Talking Apes, Jerry and Meg had done a fantastic job in season 1. It was a stunning podcast. It was my favorite podcast in the world, but it wasn't getting any listeners. And I part of your marketing strategy has to be about engaging the audience, and to me that is literally doing what it says in the tin, like taking that to a very literal sense and trying to get the audience to participate. Some sometimes in this modern day, it can honestly be like running at a brick wall, because we live in this age where we are just constantly bombarded. You know, the social media age, we're scrolling through thousands and thousands of images a day. People don't have time to stop and write comments and talk. You know, it's not that they don't like your content. It's not that they don't want to engage with it, but sometimes people just can't be bothered, or they don't have time because they've got 5,000 other things to look at. So it's a push. It really is. I really try and push our audience to interact with us, to ask questions, make suggestions about who they'd like to see on the podcast. We've done special episodes, for example, like we just interviewed Jerry, our host, and we got the audience to send in questions about it, and trying to build this kind of family. So another thing that I've tried to do is show our faces a little bit more on the social media, because I feel like a podcast is a very warm, comforting thing. It's like a hot cup of tea. It's like a hug. When I get into a podcast, it's like my comfort zone, and the hosts kind of, you're listening to the same people day in, day out. You feel like they start to become friends. So I want us to be their friend. I want us to be accessible. I've tried to create a lot of avenues for people to actually reach out to us. So not only on the social media, like I created a Facebook group, which I call the Talking Apes Family, where I tell listeners to come in and talk to us, or send in their photos of apes and just kind of like engage and get the conversation going. And I also read out audience comments on the podcast, because I feel like they deserve it. We would be nothing without them. And they deserve to have their voice heard and have their questions read out and get a shout out. And I know there are some people who are our listeners in this crowd today, so hi, Talking Apes family. We love you.
Quickly, if you could just if I can jump in, there's two things that have been, I think, important to our growth this season. One is we actually created a website dedicated to the podcast. If you would share your screen,
I would love to.
just,
if people don't mind just giving me 2 minutes to show that, because this has just been such a vital component in our marketing. Just let me get it open on my screen and I will share it. Now, not everyone has the time or the resources to create a website, but for us, it's been an absolute game changer. And there's multiple reasons for that. You know, it has multiple functions. Let me get it up on the screen. Okay, so, and I love showing you this because we're so proud of it. We worked so hard for so many weeks along with our web developer, Feline, to get this up and running and get it looking perfect. So this is really a place where we felt we could showcase all this hard work and all this fantastic content that we've been building on for so long. It's also a place where you can, you know, send people to show people what you've done. It adds a layer of professionalism and legitimacy also, because when you are booking guests, if you're going after big, important people, authors or wildlife documentary makers, you can send them here and say, look at all these amazing guests we've had. It's just been a real game changer for us. And another point I should make as well, it's kind of like something you really have ownership of, because with posting on social media, you're always posting on someone else's platform, but here is just this hub of all this content that really belongs to you. So we work really hard on this. We communicate with guests a lot to get photos of them that we can display to go with their episodes. You can see here we've got the widgets to show where you can listen to it. We list our upcoming guests, which is really good to get people excited for future episodes. And yeah, we were always thinking of new features. We've got this in the spotlight feature. And this is where we revisit old episodes that have kind of got buried in the past a couple of years ago. And they were so good, we thought people need to hear this. So we've brought them back. And this has ended up with these old episodes getting a lot of listens. So we kind of bring new ears to it. And it's fun, it's exciting. You can play around with it, think of new features, you know, it's yours and you own it. You've got links to our Instagram content. One other thing that it's fantastic for is, and I'll just run to the top, if you do a podcast episode that, for example, needs a visual element, because podcasts are entirely audio, if you, for example, interview a wildlife filmographer or photographer and people need to know what you're talking about, you can display them here. So, for example, we recently had a guest on who did primate portraits, and we've displayed some of her work here and written a blog about her, obviously making sure to copyright everything she's done, provide links to her website. But it's just been a game changer for us, and it's really helped us grow, helps us engage the audience, because we have contact forms on there. And while I'm on it, I'm going to say, please go over there, go over to talkingapes.org, go on.
Thank you,
ask us
thank
questions.
you so much. And I hate to interrupt you, but we're running out of time. And I encourage you to look at both of these websites and listen to these podcasts. I cannot thank you enough. So much good information. Everybody will get a copy of the recording and the cheat sheet that they are putting together. Thank you all so much for all you do for education, conservation. Thank you, thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Anne to close us out very quickly. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was amazing. So much wonderful content. We just, I know, just barely scratch the surface on all that is involved when you try to put together a podcast. But I wanted to reassure everyone that you will all get the webinar recording, the slides, all of those resources that our speakers mentioned today, the notes and more. It'll all go straight to your email addresses. And we're going to have it posted on EE Pro on the same page you went to register for today's webinar. So not to worry. And I'm just going to close us out today with just a few announcements, how we close out every single one of these webinars, and another invitation to check out our entire webinar series. If you enjoyed learning with us today, check it out. We've been doing webinars for 5 years now, and you can see so many wonderful recordings going back to 2017. Lots of great resources there for you. But don't go there just yet, because we are launching a brand new EE Pro site. We're launching it on Friday, and we've got some really incredible features that we're excited to share with all of you, including a brand new colorful interface that's going to make it super easy to share resources and interact with folks on EE Pro. We're going to have some brand new group features and so much more. So wait for the launch on the 16th and then head over to our site and see all that we've done on past webinars. And we do have one more webinar coming up before the end of the year. This one we are hosting with Taiwan EPA and the JEEP, which is our Global Environmental Education Partnership. We've got an international panel lined up for all of you, and they're going to be talking about education and the circular economy. And these panelists are from the Philippines, Taiwan, and the US. And Dem mentioned earlier that you've got to think about time zones when you've got an international audience. Same thing with this group. Because we've got a global audience, it's going to be a little bit on the late side for folks joining on the East Coast. It'll start at 9:00 p.m. on the 19th. But not to worry, because you can register and get the recording after. That's a little bit late for you. And there's a QR code here for you if you want to learn more and register for next week's webinar. And we were talking about conservation today. I want to point out one additional resource that's available to all of you. And this is the section on our website called ProPics, where we reach out to all of these different environmental education experts in our network and ask them for their best picks, curated lists for the best resources out there on a variety of topics, including conservation education. So if you want to learn more, check it out here. And we've got 14 topics covered so far, and we're always adding new resources to our collection of pro picks. And the last thing I want to mention is that we've got some great webinars on deck for 2023, starting with the amazing Parker McMullen Bushman. Parker's the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Inclusive Journeys, and also the founder of Eco Inclusive Strategies. She's an amazing friend of NAAE. She's going to be leading us on a webinar talking all about justice, equity, and inclusion in our field. That's January 25th at 4 Eastern. And in February, Craig Freshley is going to be joining us. And Craig is this incredible meeting facilitator, speaker, trainer, and author. This is going to be more of a skill building webinar talking all about facilitation. So anyone that has to work with other people, that has to run meetings, maybe for your podcast or webinars, facilitation really is a great skill that we could all use. So join us in February with Craig Freshley. And that is all that I've got today. I want to thank everyone again for spending the last hour with us. Thanks again to our speakers, Dem and Jerry and Jack. It is so wonderful to learn from all of you. We've got so much more to learn. And we will see you on another webinar soon. And happy holidays, everybody.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Anne. Have
Thanks,
a wonderful
everyone.
holiday season.
See you all very soon. All right. Good job.